Hello and welcome. You tune into Rush Hour with me, Ankita Saxena. Well, in a devastating accident near Ahmedabad airport, Air India Flight AI171 crashed moments after takeoff, sending shockwaves across the nation. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner bound for London with 242 people on board went down near Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. Now, sources say, tragically, no survivors have been found, with 204 bodies recovered so far. Well, DNA testing arrangements are being made at the hospital. Families and close relatives of the passengers are urged to submit samples to aid in victims' identification. The aircraft hit a doctor's residence, resident in Meghani Nagar, causing massive explosions and thick smoke. Now, this is the first fatal crash of a Boeing 787, a Dreamliner. Boeing has reached out to Air India offering full support. Also, special trains are being arranged for stranded passengers, and flight operations at Ahmedabad airport have now resumed. Union Home Minister Amit Shah is en route to Ahmedabad, and Tata Sons chairman N. Chandra has also arrived to oversee support. Meanwhile, the US National Transportation Safety Board will lead a team of investigators travelling to India to assist the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau with the probe. Our thoughts are with the families of the affected. We will keep you updated on all the story and the developments going ahead. But let me get on board my colleague Anurag Joshi, who's now joining us on the history of Boeing aircrafts being a troublemaker and being in trouble and in line of fire. Let's go across to my colleague Anurag to take stock of how exactly what has been brewing as far as Boeing is concerned. Over to you, Anurag.
Boeing has faced an intense scrutiny after two fatal crashes of 737 MAX in 2018 and 2019. The 2018 crash was in Indonesia, and the 2019 crash happened with the Ethiopian carrier. Boeing paid $2.5 billion in 2021 Department of Justice settlement for the 737 MAX fraud case, and the frequent CEO changes has raised the risks for instability at the airline maker, and also multiple whistleblowers have accused Boeing of prioritizing speed and profits over safety. Now, 737 MAX grounding has led to massive losses, which is running into billions of dollars. And in 2024, Alaska Airlines 737 MAX door plug blowout raised quality failure concerns. The 2024 audit revealed multiple instances of company failing on quality control measures.
All right, so that's the history of Boeing being in trouble and in scrutiny, and yet again Boeing aircraft has come under the scanner. But now remember, Boeing is in contact with Air India and has extended all possible support to the airline. But let me get on board Jitender Bhargava, who's the former ED Air India, who's now joining us. Hi, Mr. Bhargava, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time out. Mr. Bhargava, right off the bat, this is one of the most tragic incidents, a black day in the history of aviation, where so many people have lost their lives at once. Now, there have been various speculations as to what could have gone wrong, whether it was a failure as far as the plane is concerned, whether it's a human error. But what, according to you, can be the possible reasons? I mean, we will get to know the details once the black box is retrieved. But what, according to you, could be the possible reasons of the flight taking off and within minutes crash landing?
The airline industry has a standard operating procedure in the case of an accident. There is no point in speculating as to what could have gone wrong, whether it was a technical issue, a human error, or some other thing that you can think of. It is a standard practice that when you have an accident, the manufacturer of the plane, in this case Boeing, airline, which is Air India, India's regulatory agency, DGCA, will all get together, decode the black box, look at the conversation that took place in those few minutes and seconds after takeoff between the pilot, co-pilot, or between the cockpit crew and the ATC. And then they will surmise and say, look, this is possibly what went wrong. For me to speculate and say, look, this could have possibly is not the fair thing to do. That is why I had stayed away from the initial comments. But now that much of the Much what has happened after the accident is known, is in public domain. I thought, okay, I'll come and share it. But that's the ground reality, that you don't try and speculate as far as accident concerned. First is, our hearts go out to the perished families. It's very sad, very unfortunate to the airline, which otherwise has a good safety record, gets into a thing that, look, an accident has taken place. But I've been repeatedly saying it to the international media, particularly, that you got to look at India's safety record and Air India's safety record with respect to the standard parameters on which the safety records are judged. How many million takeoffs and landings have taken place? How many million passengers have you flown for an accident has taken place? And all these parameters, Air India and Indian Aviation comes out good. Now, today's accident is very unfortunate. It has happened during daytime. Been video recorded on how it happened. Plane takes off, and within minutes, it has not even reached an altitude of more than 700 feet, and you suddenly find that there's fire and there is a mayday call from the pilot, and the plane comes hurtling down at great speed. There was no time for the pilot to dump the fuel because since the plane had just taken off, it was fully fueled. And we all know that fuel, when the plane crashes, only enhances the fire. And that is where the survival rate will be very, very low in case somebody happens. We're just waiting for the happy news to come that, yes, some people have survived. And then the pilot could not even get on and say, look, let me take a turn around and land at Ahmedabad airport, because there was just no time available. So something was terribly wrong. But what was the wrong? Only a proper inquiry, an impartial inquiry. As the Minister of Civil Aviation said, we'll get to the root of it, but that's a standard operating procedure with all airlines. Because once the defect or the cause of the accident is determined, then it's a standard practice that Boeing issues an advisory in case it has something to do with aircraft. In case it has something to do with pilot training, then the airline takes care of it. So that is where you look at, and that is why if you look at the safety track record of aviation, global aviation, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, there's been a declining trend.
Right, Mr. Bhargava, but the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, some people are touting it to be one of the most sophisticated Boeing planes that is, so invincible, so to speak. But with this, Boeing has come into scanner once again. Now, it's not been unheard of that, going back Boeing's previous history, that it has been under scrutiny for, if the previous incidents that have happened, two fatal 737 MAX crashes in 2018 and 2019. So now going ahead, will the scrutiny intensify as far as Boeing is concerned, as we are picking up, the Boeing shares have also seen a sharp cut right now. It's trading with cuts of almost 6% right now. It has crashed 6%. Going ahead, the scrutiny, is it likely to intensify for Boeing?
737 MAX was a totally different picture. FAA, how the approval was taken and how everything was done. There was a whistleblower within Boeing who had said, look, what you're doing is not correct, etc. All those things had taken place. But let's not mix the 737 MAX episode with the Dreamliner. Air India was one of the first airlines to order Dreamliner, even before the first aircraft had come out of the assembly lines. In 2010-11, Boeing issued an advisory to all airlines. There were not many airlines at that time using Dreamliner, to ground the aircraft because a certain defect was there which needed to be corrected. And then once it was corrected, the aircraft is being used by all airlines globally. Nothing has happened since 2011. If there is something, a stray incident, a kind of a thing, we can't attribute it to an aircraft defect. But as I said earlier, in the event of some technical defect being concluded in the inquiry that follows, then Boeing will take corrective action. They are mandatory to do it. FAA oversees it. Federal Aviation Administration, United States oversees it. Airlines would like to know about it because ultimately, when you have an accident, it mars the image of an airline. And which airline would like to have it when they know that there is something, a technical flaw or pilot training flaw or whatever you may say it? Because today's accident, besides being horrific, leading to the deaths of several passengers, it happened during daytime. You can't blame the weather. You can't blame anything else. You can't look at it. Pilot had 8,200. The commander had 8,200 hours of flying time. Experienced pilot. Aircraft has a good track record. So what went wrong? As I said earlier, rather than speculate, I will wait for the inquiry to be concluded. An independent inquiry, because three parties involved: Boeing as the manufacturer of the aircraft, Air India as the airline involved, and the India's regulatory agency. And then, of course, FAA comes in because it happens to be an American aircraft. So they will get it. So it is not necessary that we take a political angle to it and say, look, we will ensure safety. It's mandatorily going to be done. It is in the SOPs of the airline industry.
Mr. Bhargava, but people also believe that it was, the government wanted the airline privatized. Now, since then, since the privatization of Air India, what has really changed? Besides the branding, of course, of the airlines, what has really changed? Because, we had guests on board, some time back, and they were questioning that as well.
No, let me explain to you. I've said this very often. Rejuvenation of Air India is akin to a 5-day test match and not a 2020 IPL match. Having said this, Air India, if it had continued to be owned by the government, would have shrunk in market share and in fleet size and in network. The advantage of disinvestment has been that Tata, with their deep pockets, have been able to order 570 new aircraft, many of which have been inducted. And they have been able to expand the fleet by taking aircraft on lease, putting the aircraft which were grounded for want of spare parts back in the air. So it is not this way that 3.5 years post the disinvestment, January 22, and now that nothing has been achieved. Significant results have come in. It is going to take time, but then they're being able to expand the network. They've been able to operate flights from more points in India to more points in the United States and Europe, etc. The network is expanding. So you will reap the advantage. And as I've very often said, with Indigo, also inducting long-haul aircraft in 2027. At the moment, they've only taken 6 Dreamliners on lease. But when it comes in, then you see the reversal of roles. In 25 and 2010, when the market was booming, what were we doing? We didn't have the wherewithal to expand. Air India particularly was the carrier that operated to Europe and United States, Australia and Japan. We allowed our market to be harnessed by the European and Southeast Asian carriers. But now, Air India, with the large order that they placed, Indigo's induction of long-haul, large-capacity aircraft, you see how the Indian aviation flourishes. Keep today's incident aside. It has happened with very many international airlines, top airlines of the world, that they've had one accident and there's a temporary setback. But when you look at the long-term perspective, you look at the safety record judged by certain established parameters and not by one-off accidents.
Mr. Bhargava, finally, your last words on the fact that this has been one of the deadliest accidents to have happened in the aviation's history. Is this likely to dent the air travel or some kind of trepidation as far as the passengers are concerned going ahead, as far as the safety norms are concerned?
Prima facie, one can say yes, if there's a temporary setback. But when you look at the global trends, following every accident that has taken place, you say the market bounces back because they look at the larger picture that if Air India is operating X thousand flights, is it that the safety has been marred on many, very many flights? They don't look at it. They look at the total picture of it. And it will be in the interest of Air India also, if they put it in public domain, the safety track record, to dispel any kind of speculation that, look, Air India's performance has deteriorated. No, it hasn't. They've got a better fleet, younger fleet, more trained pilots. So there is no rationale for it. But as I said earlier, and I'm repeating it again, that let's not speculate the cause of the accident. Let the inquiry be concluded and facts established. Public domain, we will have the information public domain, and corrective action will naturally be taken.
Mr. Bhargava, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us today. With that, it's time for a quick breather. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more updates on the news. Stay tuned.